Okay, hello, I'm Stephanie and I work for Brighton and Hove City Libraries, and I'm here today in one of our community libraries in Hangleton to talk to author Sharon Dougal. Hello. I'm thrilled to be talking to her today, actually. So Sharon, just a quick introduction. Sharon has two fabulous novels which are sat in front of me, one of which was the City Reads novel of 2017, which means the whole of Brighton and Hove read it and enjoyed it and celebrated it. Sharon also works for New Writing South and has a radio show as well. Lots of fabulous things Sharon does. Has a radio show on Radio Reverb with her son Ruben, which is the only intergenerational show. I said that right?
Yeah.
Only intergenerational show in the world.
With a mum and son presenter team, yeah. So okay. The only regular radio show with a mum and son presenter team,
which is
as far as we know.
Yeah. I like to think it is the only one in the world.
Yeah. We've been going 5 years.
Oh, fantastic, which is a brilliant show.
Thank you.
So welcome to Hangleton Library.
I know it well.
Which is, which is fantastic to lead into, which is where you wrote your new novel, Should We Fall Behind? So you came up here fueled by cups of tea made by Mark. Oh, look, we have one that we made earlier.
Lovely librarians that make me cups of tea. I don't think they do it for everybody, so.
Possibly not, but
I was quite a permanent fixture, I think, for a while.
Which is amazing. So my first question really, I guess, is what do libraries mean to you? I guess as an author, firstly, and then as a parent and as a family, what do libraries mean to you?
I mean, libraries mean a huge amount. As an author, I mean, actually, Steph, I used to sit right here.
Did you? Is it your spot?
Because there's a PowerPoint under there. Yeah. I've got a rubbish laptop that needed a PowerPoint. So, I mean, libraries mean a huge amount to me for lots of different reasons. As an author, I use them a lot because there's something for me about working in a quiet space, but with stuff happening around you and with books around you. And I can work from home. I'm lucky enough to be able to work from home, you know. I don't have little kids anymore, but I always chose to come to the library. and I think part of it was also the discipline of arriving here almost like a day at work, you know, a couple of days a week, get here as soon as it opened, leave when it closed.
Really?
So
it was that long?
This is why Mark used to make me cups of tea, because it was like, she hasn't had any lunch. So as an author, you know, they've been quite really important. And like you say, the whole of Should We Fall Behind was written in this library.
Amazing.
And also in Hove Library as well. So when lockdown happened and I had to sort of do the final edits at home, I was like, oh no, I'm not going to be able to do it because this isn't my environment, you know, my writing environment. And as an individual and as a parent, libraries have always been important. They were an escape, a retreat when I was young. We didn't have many books, if any books at home. Also, my family is a big Indian family, so it was also escape from the noise of the house, I have to say. There was a lot of us. And it was a legitimate place to go and escape to as far as my parents were concerned as well. Yeah. So there was all of that. So you could meet people in the library and they would think you were just working. And also I used to go and get a lot of records from the library. I used to borrow a lot of records. So a lot of my music knowledge is from there. And as a parent, I always took my kids to the library. We lived in Tottenham when they were very small, and I used to take them to a little local library like this called St Anne's in Haringey. Lots of reasons I love the library. And also, librarians are just brilliant. I'm not just being kind because you're here, but, you know, they're always so knowledgeable, and it's just nice to be around people who love books, especially when you're trying to write them.
Yeah, well, that's nice. That's nice to hear. And it's nice to be able to come and chat to you in the
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I thought, shall we kind of go in? So Should We Fall Behind was released last week, wasn't it?
It was published on the 22nd of October. The official launch is the 29th of October. So it's very current.
Yeah.
hot off the presses, as they say.
Yeah. Fantastic. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so it's published by a really fantastic independent publisher called Blue Moose Books, and it's a story of people. I mean, you've read it, so you can pitch in.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a story of people who sort of live side by side, but don't really seem to notice each other at all. It's almost as if they've become invisible to each other for one reason or another, mostly because their lives have kind of, fallen off the tracks in some way, and all in very different ways. And then one of the people, Jimmy, arrives in this kind of fairly close community, or fairly dense community, not close as in, they're all kind of caring for each other or anything at that point. His presence is the reason, or is the catalyst for their lives colliding and for them becoming a bit more aware of each other. And I suppose it's really, even though these are a disparate set of people, they're all from different backgrounds, different ages, kind of multi-generational, multicultural, inner city area, it's the kind of universal human experiences that connect them, like they do generally with all of us. So grief and happiness as well, and love and joy, and but also loss, and so it's their different but similar stories and how they interconnect, I suppose.
And it is amazing how they do interconnect, isn't it? And one character which I did really love, Devan, who kind of just weaves his way in and out of everyone's lives, touching them in different ways, and just wonderfully so as well. Such a heartwarming character.
I like him as well.
Yeah.
And he's not one of the main characters in that the book is told from different points of view. So there's 5 different points of view, but he is one of the characters that kind of, like you say, weaves through all of their lives. But I didn't want all the characters to. I think it would have been too heavy, too weighty to have his whole backstory as well. And actually,
I wondered, because he doesn't have his own chapter, does he? So I sort of wondered. Yeah,
so his backstory, we do find out a little bit about it, but actually it's more important to me that he exists for who he is now in their lives, how he sort of connects with them. Yeah. As a fully formed person, so to speak.
And it's nice. I just found it nice when you do read it and you kind of think, oh, it's him. Oh, it's him, isn't it? It's him that's in her life. Oh, it's him again. And it's that's just lovely, isn't it? The way he sort of flows very, very gently, but has big impact on all of them.
Thank you. So. It is. I have to say, it's still a bit weird because it's just come out when people start talking to me about the characters in that way, because they've just been up here for so long and now suddenly they're all wandering about.
Have you had much of a chance to talk about it with anyone outside? If you know what I mean?
Not. I mean, there's been individuals and on Twitter and and a couple of people have emailed me. And friends who are reading it as well, people like yourself, friends like yourself. Yes. So not book groups or anything like that, but I am going to be doing a few of those, and of course I've got the launch, so that there'll be people talking about it there as well. But it is that is quite a weird thing,
Did you feel that with the Handsworth Times as well, that all of a sudden people were sort of dissecting your characters in a way, or talking about the plots? Or... Yeah,
and I think it's not so much that they're talking about the plot or dissecting the characters, it's more that these people suddenly exist for them. They've kind of gone out of my head and they exist as out there, and that's a bit of an odd feeling. I'm sure it's the same for all writers. It's a really lovely feeling because actually readers start having different relationships with the characters. So Devan, for example, is important, and I like him, as a character. But you've obviously felt quite an affection for him, which is really nice. So it's actually lovely.
Well, it's nice because I guess because he's not one of, as you said, he's not one of the major characters, but he's quite pivotal, isn't he? I think to the story.
He is. Yes, he's very important.
I've got a little quote, and I don't want to misquote this person. So there was a person on Twitter a blogger called Louder Than War, and she described your writing as having laser sharp precision, which I absolutely loved. And I wrote that down. I was sort of reading a few reviews, which are all glowing, I must say, aren't they? The reviews have been amazing.
It's been overwhelming, yeah.
Oh, they're so good to read, actually. And
it's so scary when because, any book, even if it's science fiction or crime, if it kind of comes from a place within, I think. So it's very exposing, putting a book out there and not knowing how people are going to respond. So, the reviews so far have just been incredible.
But I loved that line, and I was describing your books to someone else, actually, and I was saying, you can literally smell, when Sharon writes, you are there in that room. You are there in Jimmy's car. You are in there, aren't you, I feel, and that...
Well, that's a huge compliment.
Well,
actually.
It is amazing, and how do you do it?
I think the job of the writer is to transport people, into other worlds, whatever those worlds are. So the more you can make it a living, breathing world, and I think there are secret techniques that we know. Well, the thing about the smells and the sounds, it's like bringing a lot of senses into the writing. Not just seeing things, but how things feel, how things smell, how things sound, and that helps make it more evocative.
Especially bleach factors a lot in Handsworth Times, doesn't it? I just remember I just remember reading Handsworth Times and thinking, I can smell that bleach. I can smell it.
There's a lot of Dettol.
Yes, it is Dettol. It's Dettol, isn't it? Yeah.
There's probably a bit of bleach as well, but there is a lot of disinfectant going on.
And you can smell that, But which brings me to another question. Actually, food. I think food is very important to you.
It's very important to me.
And again, there's lots of food in Should We Fall Behind. I think Jimmy is cooked for, isn't he? And just. Again, that the description of the food itself, but the love behind the preparation for the food and the act of preparing the food.
And I think with both the books, it's I know it's a very current theme, sadly, but food poverty as well. And the kind of contrast between the fantastic food that's cooked for Jimmy, but also his food poverty, which is similar to some characters in the Handsworth Times as well. But food, I love food. But, it's something that, again, it's one of those universal things that connects people and brings people together and marks, lots of occasions and lots of situations, good and bad, It's over food. I cook a lot. I love cooking.
Do you?
I do. And it's not like going to the library, but it's it's something I do to kind of, it's a space I can go to. I can go cook to relax.
Nice.
Bit of music, glass of wine, cooking.
Nice. Well, that leads me quite nicely, I think. Food and wine and music, all things which are very, very lovely. Well, music's obviously very important to you as a radio presenter, and your show is fab. I won't fangirl too much, but
you can. I don't mind.
Oh, and you know what? I love your radio show because the chat between you and Ruben is just so delightful, isn't it? It's just lovely.
We do love our music in our house, actually, and what we bring to that show is basically what we do at home. So
how lucky and lovely, and
a little snippet of our life at home, and not just with Ruben. Ruben's a twin, so with his twin brother and his sister now as well, and his dad. So it's a lot of music talk.
Yeah, which is lovely, isn't it? And I think
it is important to me.
Yeah.
I think it's in the books. It's almost like it's a cultural marker, obviously, but the sounds and the music. I think more so in Should We Fall Behind. For the Handsworth Times, it was very it was very evocative of a certain place and time.
Yeah.
And with Should We Fall Behind, it's more almost part of the landscape. It's how. When people talk about being out in the countryside and hearing the birds, for me, the sound of a place is the music that's coming out the shops or out the cars or what people are listening to, you know, on their headphones, and you can hear bits of it. So, so it's something I'm very aware of all the time, and is quite important to me. And it's a bit more subtle, I think, the music in Should We Fall Behind, but it's in there because I wouldn't know how to not have it in there.
Absolutely. And I like the way that obviously just the backstories and how you learn about the characters through things like that, isn't it? Through their mentions of food or music. Or, so you can kind of place them, can't you?
Yeah, there's a bit of music from all over the world, in it, because the characters are from all over the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, which I really like. I guess I was going to ask you about the books that you read. Are there any that influence you, perhaps, or just what do you like to read? Do you have any spare time at all, Sharon? I'm not good.
You know, when I'm writing, I tend to read more short stories than novels.
Yeah.
I think because I'm so immersed in my whole own sort of world, you know, fictional world, it's quite hard to become immersed in others. But I do, so I do read a lot of short stories. And I'll just mention one of the collections I'm reading now, which is really brilliant, is by an author called Wendy Erskine. Do you know her?
I don't.
Okay, well, check her out. Yeah. Her collection, I think, is called Sweet Home. Yeah, Sweet Home. That's really great. Yeah. But I do read novels as well. You know, there's lots of authors I love. I think, you know, if you're writing, you have to read. It's, you know, it's the. Yeah. I don't really understand writers who say they, you know, or people who want to be writers but don't read.
No.
You go, you know, what? You know, reading a few books is probably worth quite a lot of those creative writing courses that you're going and paying for. Actually, go to the library and just read loads.
Oh, well, that's interesting, actually.
Yeah, so I love Elizabeth Strout, I love John Steinbeck, I love Hermann Hesse, who I wrote my dissertation on when I was a student all those years ago. I love R.K. Narayan and V.S. Naipaul and Jhumpa Lahiri. You know, there's loads and loads and loads. It really depends what mood I'm in. Yeah. Where I am. On holiday, I read a lot. So
do you?
Yeah, I read a lot. And more recently, I've read some more local authors as well. Okay. So Katie Massey, who wrote a memoir called Are We Home Yet? Which has just come out, which is really brilliant. And she's in my writing group. We're in a writing group together. Okay. And Craig Jordan Baker, do you know him? He's just written a book called The Knockallians, which is set in Southampton, which is really brilliant as well.
Is that a new...
They're both new. They're both out in the last couple of months.
So you're in a writing group. So do you go and do they give you feedback?
We give each other feedback. So this is through New Writing South, and I suppose that's why I'm reading a lot more local authors or sort of, you know, more contemporary authors because of my job, my day job as well. So in the writing group, we there's 9 of us, and 3 of us share work and get critical feedback each month.
How do you cope with that? Is that
it's really important. I think it's really important. Yeah, I mean, you've got to be able to take the constructive criticism. Otherwise, you're just not going to learn. You're not going to improve. No. So you know, it's all very well having the X Factor mums around you, which is basically my husband and my kids. But really, you want the. You don't just want the good stuff. You want the stuff that's going to make it better, that's going to polish your work. So
and do you feel comfortable giving feedback to them? Does that come quite naturally?
Yeah, I mean, I've done it for a long time in various jobs as well. Yeah. I think, there are ways of giving feedback. Okay. You know, you've got to be kind, and you've got to be constructive. And it's not kind to let someone try and put something into the world which isn't up to scratch either.
Well, that's a good way of looking at it, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, they're all brilliant, all the writers in my writing group.
That's good. I'm just going to have a quick... well, I would like to ask you one last question, if that's all right, as well. On your radio show, if you could have anyone as a guest,
right?
Should we say dead or alive? If you could have anyone at all, who would you have?
I should have thought about this a bit more. Again, it could be absolutely anyone. You know, when you
top five, maybe?
Oh my goodness, I'd really like Nina Simone, but I think I'd be quite scared.
Yeah, oh my goodness.
But I'd love to. Yeah. Not because she's scary, but you know,
I think she was.
I wouldn't want to, you know, be on the wrong side of her, but I just think she's one of my absolute heroes, and I love her music. But I just think to have come to have produced the stuff she produced through the adversity that she had to go through. So definitely her. I'd quite like Joe Strummer there. He'd have to be there in the room. Who else? I mean, I was thinking about this. I was thinking actually I'd quite like to, maybe not on my radio show, but I'd quite like to not interview, but talk to my grandparents more about their stories. I realise that there's very little, I know about their childhoods and how, and I suppose writing this book, because it's so much about, how we become the people that we are, the things that shape us and form us. It has made me think a lot about my own family in that way, and family members, that I never got the chance to do that with, even though I knew them. Language was a bit of a barrier, but also, they died quite a while ago before I really got into writing. But yeah, I'd love to be able to go back and just really have a long chat over food. My nonna, which is my grandfather, was a brilliant cook, so maybe over food that he'd cooked.
So do you keep a diary? I mean, you're very close to your family anyway. You're very close to your children, aren't you? So do you have? And you share a lot. You go to gigs with them, and you share a lot with your children,
going
don't
to
you?
Gigs.
But do you think they will be able to say, yes, mum was into this, or mum was this, or mum was that?
I think they know. I think we have very different relationships with, this generation, my generation, your generation. We have different relationships with our children than our parents did or our grandparents did, for all sorts of reasons. Not. I'm sure they would have liked to have been able to have different sorts of closer relationships with their kids, but there were other priorities, like going out to work all day, basically, or looking after lots of kids. So I'm one of 6. My mum's one of 8. My partner's one of 7. So
oh really?
Yeah,
it is having a large family brings a whole different dynamic, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, and there's cultural things going on as well, and relationships, particularly with dads, I think have changed. Men are more able to talk now, and I think that's one of the characters in the book, Nikos. There's a little sense of the sort of lack of communication between him and his children as well. So
it's quite but again,
don't stop crying on me.
No. It's just not heartbreaking, might be a bit, but heartwarming in a way as well. But just so beautifully written, amazing just how you delve into those feelings, isn't it? And a relatively unlikable character, but I guess I'm thinking by the end, I'm thinking,
I think that the sort of almost point of that was people are never what we assume they are, just by our sort of fairly limited interactions with them. So that goes for Nikos, but also for Jimmy, and also for Ebele, who's one of the other characters. They seem quite difficult and unlikable in some ways. But actually, once you kind of get behind that, there's always a reason why people are as they are. Really.
Which is fantastic, and I think that's probably a good place to end, really, isn't it? Just as you say, just bringing out those hidden depths, really, which you do so brilliantly.
I think it's especially for a librarian, because you know your books.
Well, I read a fair amount, but I was saying to someone else, I said, you must. If you haven't read this yet, you absolutely must, and then read Should We Fall Behind, because I said they're just fantastic. And good luck with the launch.
It's really lovely to see some in the library as well.
So. Absolutely thrilled that we've got. Well, I keep kind of poking these to people and making them borrow them. Not making them; they want to borrow them, but
borrow them from the library and then go and buy a copy.
Absolutely, that's what I would say. Yes, borrow it from us and then have your own copy to treasure at home,
or give it as a gift to someone.
Yes. Very, very much so. But thank you so much for coming.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
To the place where
it's really nice to sit where I sit.
Yes,
my desk.
Yes. And a cup of tea, another cup of tea from Mark. So thank you so much.
No, thanks for inviting me. It's really great.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Good luck with the launch, which is this week.
Yep.
Yeah, so the 29th
of October. So I don't know when this is shared, but
it might have happened, mightn't it, by the time this goes live? But I hope it's good fun, and thank you again.
Thank you.